So Zach, when did the whole Strava thing come about?
It was just I've had a Strava account for a little while, since like last year sometime. I just would only post things on it like when I would like try to do something like that wasn't a race that I wanted to document the time on. So I put like one post up last year when I ran a hard effort on the Conestoga Trail back here at home, like an out and back training route that I do. Um, and then that was like all I was using it for. So then it just sat there. And then when I ran the Conestoga Trail Run this year, the race, the 10-mile race, I wore my Garmin for it, and I figured I wanted to try and I ran with the Garmin, so I was like, I'm going to record it, and then I wanted to upload it, so I did, but I had to sync everything, so then it synced like everything, and I just didn't bother to go in and privatize anything or like weed stuff out. So I was only trying to get that one run on there, but then I was like, whatever. And I think my old track coach really likes looking at my training, so I was like, maybe I'll just leave it.
Yeah, I've noticed it's Jeff Bradley, right, who's making comments here and there, and it's been fun to see. You know, I've always been curious, and I forget if I revealed this to you, but when you and I were filming, there were times I was so curious. I think at your peak, you were doing somewhere between like 5 or 6 hour runs daily, and there were times that I actually thought about like sneaking a GPS watch into your pack just to see what you're doing. And who's that?
1 second, I have to say goodbye to Ainsley because I'm leaving tomorrow to go to Oregon.
Hi.
Can you say hello, Ainsley?
Hi, Ainsley. Is this your niece?
Yeah, this is my niece. So, yeah. All right, Ainsley, I'll see you later this year. Okay? I think so. All right, see ya. That's all there really is to the story. I was like, maybe I'll just change the settings so that I only show what I want to show, and I don't know. And then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll just leave it.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your race at Conestoga. It's a 10-mile trail race near your hometown. I don't know if it's directly in Lancaster.
Yeah, it's in Lancaster County. The county's pretty big. I mean, relatively speaking, I guess. Like the city of Lancaster is very small, but the county there's so much farmland in it that it's actually pretty big. So yeah, the Conestoga Trail it's actually like a 60-mile trail, 62 miles, something like that. But it's actually a lot of roads. It goes like all across, probably not clear across the county, but through a lot of the county. But it's a network of like bits and pieces of trail, and then lots of stretches of like country roads. But the last 10, 12 miles are the best part in my mind, and that's pretty much all just trail. Like not
those climbs look really punchy. The climbs and descents.
Yeah, punchy is a good way to describe it. It's basically, I tell people the race is basically straight up or straight down. And anything that does kind of flatten out is just like so rocky and technical and rooty that you can't really run fast on it anyways. So that's maybe exaggerating a bit. But basically it's just you're either doing a hard climb, a hard descent, or running a technical section of trail. So it's just punchy and like a real meat grinder. It's fun. I love it. It's just kind of what I'd say grew up on, but I actually never discovered the trail until I was in like my 20s. And when I did, I was like really happy and also like disappointed that I hadn't found it sooner.
I did love your earnestness and vulnerability to a degree in your comeback, in describing your comeback about if you'd regain your old form. Is that fair to say? And so I just want to, maybe dig a little deeper and talk about what it did for your confidence overall, and do you feel like you're on your way back? Because for people not in the know, you had haglin surgery, which is a shaving of the heel spur a little bit, and that's been like the primary thing, right? Although you're dealing with a couple of other issues. So just talk about your comeback and what it did for you mentally and how you feel physically now.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't know, basically my left foot has just been a real hot mess for years. I've kind of lost track of how long. I think, well, back to around the last time I raced JFK, which I think was maybe 2018. It was like that year, that fall that it started. I had a bad right foot due to a plantar fasciitis issue for a while, and then my left foot became bad, so then I had two bad feet at one time, and then the plantar finally went away, and then the left foot hung around, stubbornly refusing to heal. So yeah, I had a bone spur removed from the back of my heel. That definitely helped. I've been very pleased with the headway we've made since taking that out.
When was the procedure?
I had it December 1st during the pandemic. So what was that,
We're in 2021, yeah.
2020. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, quite a few months ago. And my heel feels way better. I still have pain in my foot, but it's not usually in my heel anymore. It's more like farther up through my foot, through the lateral outside side, which I had kind of had before, but there was so much going on. I had like heel pain and that pain, and it was just like I had super bad flexibility through my ankle. So basically now I have my flexibility back, so now I can use my foot more properly, and we're hopefully just kind of like working through the stages of strengthening it and getting it used to being a foot that can function again. So
all that to say, it casts a big doubt and maybe even a gray cloud over your confidence and your mentality, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was a person who was rarely ever injured. Like I could count my injuries like more or less on one hand. And when I did get something, half the time it was something that just kind of worked its way out. But this, really disrupted training. Like, I think one of the big reasons for my success over the years was my consistency. I could just go out and do a ton of work. Like, not that I wasn't talented, but I was talented in a different way. My talent was that I was durable and that my body could take a ton of abuse. And when I got injured, that basically took away my superpower. I couldn't do the thing that made me good, which was like, train really hard, basically, and train really consistently. Like the consistency I had over, I don't know, like 3, 4, 5, however many years, probably even longer than that. If you look, like, basically I was just consistently running through college. That just builds up. It's like this big snowball that builds a lot of momentum. And then finally my snowball kind of like fell apart and lost all its momentum. So yeah, it takes a big hit to, like confidence. It just takes a big hit to your confidence, to not really be able to work the way you're normally able to. So your confidence is kind of in being able to prepare in the way that you know how. And then when you can't prepare that way anymore, it's really hard to be confident, because you're like, well, I don't know, I did what I could, but I don't know. This isn't how I normally prepare for something. And then there was also just a big period where I didn't even run. Like, I think I stopped running like 2 months before surgery, and I don't think I started running again until like, I forget what, let's see, I think I had the surgery in December, and I think I did my first like shuffle down a hill in like the spring with some buddies. So yeah, like several, like I think like 2 months before, several months after, just no running at all. So when I came back, it was really weird. It was like I didn't really feel like a runner. It was like so taxing. I was like so out of running shape. I could get on the bike and like pound on Zwift and stuff and try to train with the local triathletes. But the running shape was just not there. And then I'd have pains that I wouldn't normally like. I would have like then like my knee would hurt, like just stuff would hurt because I wasn't used to running. So yeah, you just like, and then like even when I was training, then I didn't race for a while. So you're just like, you don't know where you're at. Um, and yeah, it's just, after a while, it just goes so far that you, like I try to be optimistic, like, oh, come back stronger, like we'll work our way through this. But after a while, it just weighs on you so much that and your clock is ticking, like in terms of like, well, you don't stay fast forever. So then you're like, well, what if I come back 3 years later and I'm like not fast anymore? Which is somewhat illogical because like I'm still in a really good like phase of my endurance years. But it's stuff that gets in your head. And so you start to wonder if like maybe you're out of shape and you go out and you try and run fast and you're like, that felt fast, and then you're like, oh, that was like 6:30 pace. And you're like, well, maybe I just don't have those gears anymore. And you start to wonder if like maybe your best years are behind you, maybe you're just not what you once were. Maybe like that really great race you had back like 4 years ago is going to be the best race of your career. And you always like to think there's a better one ahead of you. So it just gets, it just gets difficult. But yeah, I came home and raced Conestoga, which was really good because that's a course and a race that I've trained on enough, and I've trained on the trail enough, and then I've raced the race enough that it's a really good testing ground for me to know like if I'm in good form or not. So yeah, it was great for me to come home and run it and kind of get a check on where I'm at.
Yeah, it was I think a race that you had run previously several years back, and I think you were the first person to break 90 minutes on that course. And to come, the punchline is you came within seconds of your old time. And you wrote in your social media posts on Instagram that you had never been happier to run a non-PR race. And, given the context of everything, it's easy to understand why.
Yeah, I mean, so I've run the race 4 times now. I think I ran it, the first time I ever ran it, I think was in 2012, way back before I ran JFK or any of that stuff. And you're right, no one had ever run faster than 90 minutes, and I ran an hour 28 that year. And that was kind of like, it wasn't my first trail race, but it was kind of like one of those moments in trail running where it's like, oh, maybe this is my thing. Like, maybe this is what I'm good at. Because apparently no one's ever been able to do this. And I showed up and did it, and they seemed impressed, and they paid me $100. And I was like, okay, cool. But so I ran it an hour 28 the first year. And then I think I didn't run it the next year because I think I was on the ships. I think that's how it happened. And then I ran it again in, I think, 14, and I ran an hour 24. So I took like 3-4 minutes off my time. And then I came back in 2015. And 2015 was the year, 2015 was a really good, 14 and 15 were both really good years in my career. Like I was running for Nike. I was running like Lake Sonoma. What else? I think that may have been the year I won CCC in 2015. I think I won CCC. And so I was racing well. Like those were years where like I was on point, and I had run 124, and then I came back in 2015 and ran 122. And I remember when I ran the 122.02, I was really happy. Like I was really happy with that. I was like, oh, that's like, I feel like, I can't remember for sure, but I feel like when I did it, I was kind of like, oh wow, that's awesome. But like, I'm making it kind of hard for myself to keep setting this course record. Like, which
it's a good problem to have, Zach.
Yeah, I'm not one. I always try to go as fast as I can. I'm not one to like give myself a cushion for the next year. I'm just like, no, it's like, who knows? I might be hurt next year. So I got to run as fast as I can this year. But 1:22:02. And then when I went to run the race this year, I did not realize it was 6 years ago that I had ran the race and done that. And so I looked back and I was like, oh goodness, 6 years. Like, it's 2021 now. Like, I was a different person back then, and like a bit of a different runner, and definitely in a different like standpoint of injury and health and training buildup. And I got out on the course. I was home the week leading into the race, so I got out on the course and trained on it. And the course is just always hard. But I got out there and was running, and I was like looking at my paces, and I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, I don't know if I can, like, I was starting to have doubts of like how close I was starting to think, like, I was like, can I even go under 90 minutes anymore? Like, can I even just do that? And it was like, part of you was kind of like, like, you should be able to do that. But part of me was like, I don't know if I can go under 90 minutes. So I just really had my doubts, and like, let alone the 1:22. And then the day before, like 2 days before I got on the course, and they had marked part of it. So I ran some of the marked sections, because it generally follows the standard trail, but there's a few spots where they take you off on these deviations through the woods. They're sort of bushwhack, sort of just lesser used trails. And so I was like doing that. And then the day before the race, I went out and I was like, okay, well, I know the markings are up, so I'm going to check a couple of these spots where it's always a little like, I'm always a little unsure of how they're going to take us. So I went out and checked it. And I got to this one section that's always kind of like almost an off trail section. And I was running it, and I was like, man, this is, I was like, this feels way longer than it used to. I was like, this section, it's a section to get you from like a good section of trail to another section of trail. And they just kind of like make it up through the woods. And I was like, this feels longer. And I popped out and I was like, yeah, this is different. Like, they changed this. And in my state of self-doubt, I was almost relieved, because I was like, okay, this is different. This makes it slower. I'm not sure that I can get my 1:22 on this course with this. It wasn't a huge change, but it was enough that I was like, I don't know if I could break my old course record now with this change. And I was kind of relieved. I was like, okay, now I just go out and try and get the win and run as fast as I can. And I don't have to worry too much of comparing to my old time. So in a way, it was nice. But then I went out and I ran race day, and I was just kind of, the race director asked me as we were going over the start line, he was like, Zach, what's your goal? And I just said, as fast as I can. That was all I said. And when the gun went off, I was like, well, I'm just going to like throw the pedal to the floor, because that's pretty much I'm like one gear. Well, I'm kind of just one gear runner anyways, but especially in this race, I'm kind of just like one gear. It's like they shoot the gun and I basically start sprinting. I mean, not sprinting, but I basically just put the pedal all the way to the floor, and the pace fluctuates because of the train, but like the effort is just like, you're just laying it on all race. And so I did that, and I would think to myself during the race, I remember I kept thinking I would be like, because I always remember there's a film of Mount Marathon where Ricky Gates is talking about the uphill portion, and he's saying how he thought to himself, he's like, this could be faster, like we could be going faster. And I always kept thinking in that race this year, I was like, could I be going faster? And then I would be like, well, yes, I could. Like, I might be heaving and like already like redlining, but I'd be like, could I be going faster? And you can almost always answer yes, because like if somebody told you sprint for the next 10 yards, you could pick it up at least a little. So I'd be like, could I be going faster? And I'd be like, yes. And I'd be like, okay, well then go faster. And so I just kept doing that throughout the race. Never looked at my watch. I was running with a Garmin, and which I'm normally not, in that race, but I was, but I never looked at it. And when I got to the finish line, it was, well, and I felt good. Like I felt clean. Like my race was really clean, like like from a technical standpoint, through all the terrain and the turns and all of that. But never looked at the watch. So I was like, well, I feel like I'm having a good race, but I could be like 4 minutes off my record for all I know. So I got to the line and I crossed in like 1:22:42, something like that. So I was like 40 seconds off my course record, and I was just thrilled. I was like, whoa. I was like, I told the people at the finish line, I was like, I really wasn't sure I could do that today. But I did, and it was a huge confidence booster. And I was like, okay, I'm like 2015 Zach, like here we go again. So hopefully.
I have a question from a Patreon supporter who may fall into this, from Mark. What does he do to push through the hard moments? Does it hurt like everyone else? Does he have a mental mantra? The latter of which maybe you figured out in this race. But I am curious too, in those moments when the needle's revved up all the way into the red, I'm curious what also goes through your mind, because I kind of imagine it to be kind of a deep, dark place, and you don't strike me as a dark person. So how do you push through mentally when everything in your body, every fiber of your being, your body, your lungs is screaming at you to stop? Like, I don't know if you can articulate that any better than you just did, but I'm just curious about the mental aspect of all this.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like everyone's always interested in this, and you feel like you should have some like light bulb explanation for people.
Right.
But I also think about it, I'm like, because like I've talked to a couple cross country teams while I've been home, like local cross country teams, my alma mater, and then McCaskey High School as well, the school in the city. And they always like, I feel like the coaches are always like, say something inspiring, like say something that'll fire these kids up. Like they pretty much told me to do that for my alma mater, Hempfield. Because they got like a super good team and they're going in some big meets for the year. And so, yeah, like a little bit put on the spot, but it's just kind of like, say something inspiring. And then you're like, oh, shoot. And it's like, I do want to say something inspiring, but when I think about it, sometimes it's like, it's just kind of bullheaded stubbornness. Like, it's not really anything too fancy, or at least it's not in my mind, but maybe my brain just works differently than most people. Like, I don't know. I don't know how other people's brains work, because like I'm not that. But I mean, I guess I have kind of a couple examples, sort of. So I gave this to the high school kids from my high school the other day as an explanation. And after I did it, I kind of left and was like, was that a dumb explanation? Like, I wonder what they thought of that. Like, that was kind of goofy. But I explained it like, because I have this real stubbornnness of like, when I want something, I just get like really, really fixated on it, and I like can't let go of it. And like that was something I had with like growing up in school, like wanting to do well in my classes, and then like in sports, like I was always that kid like driving to the finish. Like I was known in college for like foaming at the mouth in 10Ks. Like I would be like, so, I wasn't a world-class 10K runner, but I gave so much effort. Like it was like I lost all bodily functions except moving forward. So like all my spit was just like all over my face. And my teammates knew it, and they like probably got a kick out of it. But so the example I give the high school kids was actually like how you trap a raccoon, or how they used to supposedly trap raccoons back in the day, was like you would have a log, right? And also like, I'm not a raccoon trapping expert, so maybe this is just a folklore, but what I've been told is like you would have a log and there'd be a hole in the log, and you would put a shiny object down in the hole, because raccoons really like shiny objects. And then you would take 2 nails in the hole and you would put them in like on an angle this way, so that the raccoons could reach their hand down and grab the shiny object. But as soon as they balled their fist up, they couldn't get it out because the nails would push back into their hand. But raccoons are too stubborn or too stupid, which maybe I'm both, I don't know, that they won't let go of the shiny object. Like all they have to do to free themselves is let go of the shiny object, and they can get their skinny hand out if it's collapsed. But if it's balled up, they can't get it out. But they're too stubborn, so they just keep their fist in that hole. And the trapper just like walks up and gets the raccoon because he won't let go of that shiny object. And for me, like I explained to high school kids, like that shiny object is like me wanting to do my best. And I just reach my hand in there in that hole and grab it. And I just like, for whatever reason, my brain is so fixated that it just won't let it go. Like I'll be there until like the trapper gets me, or until like I rip my hand, rip my hand off on the nails trying to pull it back out. Like, just kind of ride or die. So like, and it seems like goofy. But like, that's how I explained it, that you're just so fixated that you have to have that you won't that you just won't let yourself give up on it. And you may even fade physically within the race, but you're still like driving because you're still trying to like, well, if my goal is just doing my best, I mean, well, then I still have to just keep pushing hard. If your goal is to win, then sometimes you do fade and you actually don't win, but you're still like grasping to that, like, well, I'm going to try to win, or I'm going to try to do my best. So like that was the example I gave the high school kids, and they won their meet the next day, which was like a big invitational that I don't think my high school has ever won. So
well,
I don't
there
know.
You go.
Maybe it worked. I don't know. Apparently one of the freshmen on the team said he hit a lull, and then he reached down in the log and found a good last mile. I wasn't there, but that's what one of the people told me afterwards.
Did you say you had a second example?
Yeah. The other thing is like, so this was the thing I thought I should have told the high schoolers in hindsight. And
I don't know. The raccoon story is pretty good.
Okay. Well, maybe it was good then. So the raccoon story is maybe a better explanation of like explaining like what's going on in my head. But the other explanation I think that I have is just like, I really like the pain cave. Like, I mean, I hate it, but I love it. Like, like everybody, well, not everybody, some people just hate it. But I like it. And I think for me, one thing is like, I feel like I'm good at like getting in there and digging in it. And when you get late in an ultra, you basically assume everybody's in there somewhere. Some of us are deeper in the pain cave than others. But I think sometimes the person that can win is the person who can go the deepest into the cave. So I think sometimes for me, it's like, well, I can go deeper into this cave than you can, so like, I'm just going to like bury you. Like I'm hurting, and like, you're probably hurting, but you're on like a climb with 5 miles to go. And I'm just like, bury him. Like, just like, just push. Like every hard step forward is another like little bit that you're pulling away from the person behind you, because you're just like willing to push that hard. I mean, partly just because you're going hard, but also like, I guess, because you're willing to push that hard, and maybe they aren't willing to push that hard. And so like the thing I was thinking I should have told the high school kids was like, growing up, I was like never naturally the fastest. But my thing is that like, if you're like, you only have so much fitness, right? Like you can't really like, there is a limit to like what you can do on race day. But I think for most human beings, a lot of people don't really get to 100% of what they can do. They don't reach that limit. So like your fitness, say, allows for like this much, but I don't know, say the average person can get to about like 80%. They can utilize like 80% of that fitness, and they can't get that last 20%, not because it's not there, but because like their brain is just like, okay, this hurts and I'm going to pull back now, but then there's some people who can get a bit more. They can get 90% or 95%, or, maybe somebody can get like 98%. And I was just thinking that like, I might not be like as like your fitness combined with like your talent is up here, and like I might not have as high a level. Like somebody else might be up here, and I might be like here, but maybe they can only access like 80%, and maybe I can access like 95%. And all of a sudden, like me
Evens
at
out the
my
playing field.
95% and them at their 80%, like all of a sudden we're pretty even, you know? And so that's like a boost of like, okay, well, how do I beat someone who's probably just better than me? And like that's how you do it. You're just willing to like, it's just basically like I'm willing to hurt more than you are.
Right.
And hopefully I don't offend, but like my buddy Matt Lipsy here in Pennsylvania, one of the he's one of the best trail runners around here in Pennsylvania, and we'll race sometimes, and we train together too. And Matt's really good downhill, and like he'll toast, he'll burn me going downhill sometimes, and like he's pretty good at steep uphill, and we kind of go back and forth a little bit, but like in races I found that like, or in training with Matt, I found that like Matt's really good to about 90 minutes, and then after 90 minutes, which makes sense because Matt sticks to the shorter, he generally sticks to the shorter stuff. After about 90 minutes, Matt's like ready to go like find a beer and kick back and goof off and do something different. Like he's not necessarily ready to be done with physical activity, but he wants to go like ride a mountain bike or play soccer or just like goof off, and it's just like his attention span just doesn't really go past 90 minutes for running, which is kind of a shame because I'm like, I look at Matt and I'm like, Matt, you could be really good at like some of this longer stuff too, but you're just like, you get to 90 minutes and you're like, oh, okay, let's go do something else. And I always feel like I'm like, well, I kind of learned that about him training with him. And maybe now that I said this, maybe he'll listen to this and he'll come back to bite me. But I'm kind of like, if I'm in a race with Matt that lasts longer than 90 minutes, I know that like all I need to do is get to 90 minutes with him and then just keep hammering. And like, that's kind of his limit. And then like, I keep going. And then he's kind of like, maybe backing off a bit and being like, oh, okay, I'm ready to go have a beer, and I'm just like, where's the finish line? Like, we're going to keep going another hour, and so I think that's kind of like sort of what I was just talking about, but also like just similar. It's like just some people are like Matt's probably really good at hurting as long as it's like 90 minutes or less, where I'm like, well, like I'll hurt all day if you want me to, So, I mean, not necessarily, that's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration, but it's just like, I'm like, I've always been one of those people who's like, the bigger it is, the better it is. So it's like the longest race, the hardest race, the most pain, whatever it is, just like throw it at me.
Yeah, you've been using, maybe to put it a little more succinctly, you've been using the term all gas, no brakes in your posts lately. And actually, I Googled this to see if there's an origin story behind this terminology, and I actually came across this YouTube show hosted by this guy, Andrew Callahan. Do you know about this?
No, I don't know.
No, it's about this, and it's weird how, I don't know if it's just sheer coincidence, I guess, if you didn't know about him, but it's basically this guy who used to have a YouTube show called All Gas, No Brakes, and he and his camera guy would travel the world or travel the country in this rundown Winnebago like camper and interview all these people, like the fringe people in society. And I didn't delve too deep into that rabbit hole, but I was like, wait a minute, that's what Zach's doing right now. Is it just sheer coincidence? But I guess it is. But it is a great terminology to co-opt because it just describes you to a T.
Yeah, I mean, like if I thought about like making stickers, like all gas, no brakes stickers, like
well, you might not have. Now you have to look into licensing with this.
But now I might. He may have it. He may have it. But like, I think the concept is pretty universal. Like in Europe, you'll hear people say full gas. Like they'll say full gas. Like I forget what the company is or whatever, but they make those cool hats or whatever that I think like some of the Solomon athletes wear, and they'll say full gas on them. But that would be like when I worked with the buff guys, I think that was a term they would use, like full gas. It's just like full gas. But and it's like the same thing, all gas, no brakes. So yeah, I think that was my mindset going into Conestoga Trail Run. It was like, well, if my foot lets me, I just want to go all gas, no brakes. Like, because that's how I love to run, especially in a race that's like 10 miles, because it's like, okay, 10 miles, we're done in an hour 22 and change. Like, it's
You're
like,
done in an hour 22.
Yeah. But I was like, I can hurt for 80 minutes. Like, like how much can you blow up in 80 minutes? Like, probably a lot, but like, but, or I don't know, maybe I'm not fast enough to blow up as much as, oh no, speed doesn't really, it's more just a matter of effort. So, but anyways, yeah, it's just fun. And well, I mean, you go all gas, no brakes in a 50 miler or 100 miler. And I mean, not that I'm opposed to that, but it can get really ugly. Where in like a 10-mile race, it's like, it's not quite as risky.
Well, we left out the film talking about how you were about to embark on to the bus that you were working so diligently on. And I'm sure it was a nice distraction from the injury. I couldn't think of a more diametrically different lifestyle of how you're living these days versus the one of you as a caretaker at BarCamp. So I wanted to tap into that world and lifestyle a bit. Maybe some things that may be obvious, but also less obvious to the outside observer. So tell us what the past few months have been like for Zach on the road in the Zach Shack.
Oh yeah, the name that I kind of inherited more than chose.
It's not by choice.
Yeah, I wasn't really super keen on naming the bus or anything, and then Peter Maximo started calling it the Zach Shack, and then Allie Mac made a sticker for the bus that says Zach Shack on it, and it's a great sticker. It's an awesome sticker, but it kind of, I guess, the bus sort of inherited a name. But yeah, it's been great. I'll admit, when I was deciding to buy the bus, I had some reservations. I was like, it's like, I don't know, what if I get this thing and I don't like it? Like, what if I don't like bus lifestyle? What if I'm like lonely, or I just don't like bouncing around? What if it's like too much of a pain to always be like finding new grocery stores and finding new towns and finding new parking spots, because I had traveled in my truck some, and I knew what it was like to be at the end of the night looking for a legal place to park and just be like, it's 11 o'clock and I just want to go to sleep and I don't want to get woken up by the cops, but I still haven't found a spot. Like, that's just annoying. So, but yeah, no, it's been, so I bought the bus and I was like, well, if I hate it, I just sell it. I'll probably make a profit. So it's really not that big of a risk. Or I can just like buy a place or rent a place and then just use the bus for weekend trips or whatever.
Real quick, tell people about what the Zach Shack is. Sorry, I'm going to use that until we come up with a better name.
It's all right. No, you can use it. It's a 1998, because I like old stuff. So it's a 1998 Ford E350 cutaway van that was like basically just old people shuttle bus. And then it was a construction company shuttle bus, and then I bought it. So yeah, super old, but it only had like 29,000 miles when I bought it. And yeah, I just tore it all apart inside and basically just custom made exactly what I wanted it to have, to be a little training base / home on wheels. And yeah, it took me about a year to do it during COVID,
using a lot of repurposed stuff from around the farm.
It's largely repurposed stuff. Like, my sister and brother-in-law live on a farm, and so I just like go into their barn and be like, hey, can I have this? Can I have this? Can I have this? And I just basically took a hodgepodge of like chicken wire and like old barn wood and all sorts of stuff, and just like turned it into this like rustic little sort of like a cabin or sort of like a farmhouse, I guess, on wheels. And yeah. I mean, there were some things that I did buy, but like plywood's like as valuable as gold now. So I repurposed a lot. I wanted to repurpose stuff. It wasn't really because of that, but it just kind of was convenient that I repurposed in a time and age when like plywood like was like the hottest thing on the market. But yeah, so I did that, and then put it on the road, I think in like June. And I've been on the road since then. And yeah, it's been great. I was in Colorado for probably like, I think I was in Colorado for like 6 weeks this summer training, like some time in the Springs, a bunch of time out in the San Juans, some time in the Sawatch, just different stuff. Did some Nolan scouting, just kind of whatever I wanted. Hopped around to different races, turned the bus into like a little coffee bus at a few things, like at Hard Rock. I was at Cunningham Gulch and just like set up and served coffee and pancakes. Actually, I made pancakes there too. And then they invited me to come to like the Silverton Ultra Dirty race in the San Juan. So I drove the bus out for that and did the coffee bus again because that's what they wanted me to do. And I guess I saw Goo at Trans Rockies, so they like loaded me up with stroopwafels and stuff to sling at people. And actually, Goo just shipped me a whole bunch more stroopwafels because I think they're like trying to turn me into like their little mobile spokesperson. Because now they have this sister company called Boone, which makes basically just like stroopwafels and these like amazing, like these really good nut butters. Like I've had a lot of nut butters in my day, and the Boone nut butters are like definitely some of my favorites. But they just they're in Oregon. They got there because that's where the bus is right now. I just flew home to PA for this little trip. But they shipped a bunch of stroopwafels to Oregon for me. And yeah, I think they like, there weren't a whole lot of like instructions, but I think they basically just want me to have them on board at all times so I can like share them with people. So, and then they gave me like a discount. They gave me a code so people get like % off or whatever. I think it's like my code is actually Miller Time. That's my code, Miller Time. If you buy Boone stuff, use the code Miller Time. I think you get like 20% off or something. But yeah, anyway, so the bus has kind of turned, it's my home, but occasionally it's like a little mobile breakfast station.
You're a self-admitted introverted person, but there's that duality when you do maybe signings in Europe. You've mentioned serving up pancakes and coffee, which you don't drink, by the way. So it's just that much more. Yeah. You kind of moving BarCamp on wheels and on the road. You also hung out with you were talking about Silverton and Buena Vista and, you, me, and Team Musa, comprised of like Jeff Allen and Hillary. Yeah. We spent a fair bit of time together. So tell me. We were together for like a month, probably. Yeah, no, those are some of my fondest memories from just not just during the pandemic, but just like of all time, because it was so wild and crazy and random and spontaneous. But, with those two traits that kind of exist in you, the caretaker and the introverted person, I don't know, like just how does that lend to or speak to who you are? Are there sometimes that you like being one versus the other? It's just that duality just kind of lives in you at all times? Like, when are you the happiest and most content? Yeah, I'm a mix. Like, I'm kind of a weird, I don't know if it's a weird mix. I think other people are similar, actually. But we did a film showing actually in Lancaster at Penn Cinema for the film that you made, Billy. And it was awesome. We needed, like, we had to add a theater. We had like 2 theaters, and we had like a whole bunch of like young men, like young boys, come out to see the film, and other people too from the community. But there was a big group of these young kids, which was awesome. And I did a Q&A there after that film, and it was like a long Q&A. It went on and on, but I explained to the people there. I described myself as a socially capable introvert. So basically, I explained that I'm like, typically, like, I'm the guy who just kind of likes to sit over in the corner and hope nobody talks to me. But if you get me like in a situation where I need to be interacting with people, or like
or just like, or just sometimes just like I'm having fun, like there's a cool crowd around or whatever. I can be very social, and go on and ramble and whatnot, and be more like extroverted, but I don't necessarily pinpoint it as like my natural tendency, which was like, I think that can confuse people sometimes. Like I went to college with a kid, my buddy Joel Whitwer, and I always like looked at Joel and was like, oh, Joel's like super social, super outgoing, like charismatic. And then I kayaked the Susquehanna River with him last summer, and I realized, oh, Joel's like an introvert. He's just like, he can turn it on when he needs to turn it on. But like his natural tendency, like at the end of the night after kayaking, is just kind of to like be over in the corner with his journal by himself and like write a few thoughts and then go to sleep, like, not stay up and chat. Like, and I think I'm similar. But then it's also, the other interesting thing is I've also heard that introvert extrovert thing described as like, it's like what you are, whatever, like whatever, like lights you up or like brings you energy. So like some people are extroverts because like being in like social interaction and like outgoing with people, like that's what like lifts them up. That's like what brings them alive. And so I was like, if I think about it from that way, then I have to kind of be like, oh, I wonder if I'm accurate with my description, because like sometimes I feel like I do come alive when I'm around other people and I like need to be social and jump in and do that. But there's still a part of me. So I do like benefit from that, but there's still a part of me that also just likes to be quiet and just like kind of keep to myself a bit. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of a mix. And I think that's kind of why BarCamp worked for me, because you kind of had to be like an extrovert and an introvert all at the same time.
Yeah, turn it on when guests came in and interact with them and be a good
host. Yeah, you had to be a good host and be able to do that and be around people. But then you also had to be okay with the day in the winter when like nobody, which didn't happen all the time, but like when nobody showed up and it was like just you or just you and your coworkers. So yeah, it was really kind of like, a mix of the two. And maybe that's partly why I liked it so much, because maybe that's just naturally how I am.
Well, the aforementioned Matt Lipsey certainly brought it out of you. When I saw you on social media and you guys were doing these silly banters and fights and
well, yeah, when we get together, like I think certain people bring certain sides of you out. And yeah, like when Matt and I get together, like we get each other going. But it's just maybe it also just depends who I'm around. So like I change depending on who I'm around too. Yeah. Like I'll be like like around my family, I can be like really quiet. And like, or even like with like my nieces and nephews, like, I don't know, I'm like self-conscious about certain stuff. So like if I'm like around my niece and nephews with other people, I'll be maybe a little like quiet and like weird. But if I'm just like with my nieces and nephews, like just like outside in the yard, just me and them by myself, there's nobody there to see us doing weird stuff, just like playing and being goofy, then I'll probably be like a more fun uncle, like when we're like by ourselves. But like if there's other people in the room, like I probably try to play it a little more cool. I'm not as goofy.
Well, I want to go back to our time in Colorado for a second, because I think you have to tell the iPhone in the outhouse story to the uninitiated.
I don't think I've done any podcast since that happened, so this is like my first chance to tell the world.
So to set the stage, it was me, Hillary, Jeff, and Zach, and somehow we just kind of found each other.
Well, you were, I think, yeah.
Yeah, we found each other in Camp Hard Rock, and then we decided to just hang out and camp and travel to a couple of different parts of Colorado. But it was in Silverton when this happened, and up on Corkscrew Pass. And I'll let you take it from there, because I wasn't actually there. But the story and then the subsequent social media, Instagram stories that came out of it, out of Jeff's phone, was hysterical.
Yeah. So first we drove the bus up Corkscrew Pass, which will mean nothing to most people. But if you've driven Corkscrew Pass, you might think I'm an idiot. But it made it. It was capable. But this all started on I don't know, just some day. Hillary is a photographer and she wanted to shoot some photos. She was like, hey, let's go up here and shoot some photos of like you running up on these cool
it's like a 12,000 plus foot pass. Yeah.
So like we're like, okay, so we drive. It's like Billy was in town, I think, just having a work day or something, and so it's just me, Hillary, and Jeff Allen, and we drive the bus up like most of the way up Corkscrew Pass. When you get like a couple switchbacks from the top of the pass, there's a bathroom with like a decent pull out. So we're like, okay,
like
we're
an
not
outhouse. It's not a functioning bathroom.
Yeah. Not a flushing toilet, just like a Forest Service outhouse composting thing. And so we're like, okay, we don't need to go farther than this. We're going to park the bus right here by this outhouse, and then we're just going to hike up the rest of the way. So we parked the bus there, and we're like, I don't know, we're getting ready to go out and shoot these photos. And I think like Jeff and Hillary are using the bathroom or something. And they come in and they're like, guys, like some lady just dropped her iPhone.
No.
Dropped her smartphone.
You're misremembering the story. She came out while you guys were in line.
Well, yeah, she was still there, but I was in the bus. Like I was not I didn't witness.
Right.
I guess they were in line or something. And
their version of it is they were standing in line.
This lady from like Texas or something comes out of the bathroom and is like, I don't know how it went, but she's like, I dropped my phone in there. And they're like, and I don't know. And I think they're just kind of like, well, do we get it or what do we do? And maybe someone in the meantime went in and used it, like the next person in line.
I think those two went.
And
because they were in line and they're like, well, what are we going to do? And there's a big ATV culture, by the way, out there. So that's I think what they were.
Most of the people up here are just like riding side by sides. There's like souped up golf carts side by sides around in the mountains. And so I guess the lady's husband is there, and he's like, well, we're not getting it. Like it's gone, but it's there. It's like right there. Like, I mean, not like easy reach, but it's like you can see it, and it's still on. And so they come in to the bus and they're like, some Texas lady like dropped her phone in the toilet. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, they're like, oh, well, she left. And I'm like, wait, I was like, why did you guys tell me? Like, why did nobody tell me? I was like, I would have tried to get it for her. And they're like, probably think I'm kind of crazy or whatever. But I'm just like, I wish she was still here. So I go out there, but she's gone. And I go in the bathroom and like people, I think I may have had to wait for somebody to come out of the bathroom because people were still using it. And I go in there and I look down and sure enough, there's her phone just like so there's like a poo cone like there normally is. And her phone is just like just wedged in, like sticking up, lights are on, like it's just glowing down there. But it's like, I don't know.
Wedged into a hill of poo.
I don't know how far down it is, but it's like you wouldn't just reach your arm in and grab it. It's like it's far enough down to make it like undesirable to get it. And so I'm thinking of like options. I'm like, okay, because this is just like BarCamp mode. Like this is what we did for like 5 years. Like, oh, there's a problem. Like, how do we fix it? Like, you know? And so, and we also used to shovel the composting toilets. So I was not really that grossed out. Like I used to shovel these things. Like it's not like it's just human poop. Like that's all it is. So to most people that's really gross, but it's like that's all it is. So I was like, so I had a brief thought I was like, Jeff, do you think he could hold my ankles? Like maybe he can like dangle me down in there and just like hold me and I'll just like grab it. But then I was like, all the methane and whatnot. And like at BarCamp, if you get dropped, like, you know how to like get in the backside and whatnot. Like, but here I'm like, this isn't my toilet. So I'm like, that could like, I could die. That's probably not so good of an idea. But then I'm like, oh, okay, I have some trekking poles. So I go in to the bus and I pull out these trekking poles. They're not like super nice trekking poles. They're just like these aluminum trekking poles or something that my sister didn't want anymore. And I was like, oh, I'll take them in the bus for like skimo season. So I pull these things out and I go and I like stick them down in the hole and I like try
Pointing
and
side
grab the
first.
phone. Yeah, pointy side, like the side that hits the ground, right? But there's like no baskets on them. And the phone is like too smooth. So I can't like get it with that side. So I'm like, okay, I need more grip. So I flip them around to the handle side, you know, and I still have the poles. And
Of course you do.
I stick the poles down in and I'm trying to grab it with the handles and I fail again because it's just like too smooth. And I have to be careful because I'm like, I don't want to push it like farther in. Like right now it's positioned so that I stand a chance, but if it like falls over, it's going to get way hard. So I'm like, okay, like, but I can't grip it the way it is. So I just like blindly push down into the pile of poo, you know, hoping I can like get more to grab on. And she has a pop socket on her phone. Like, you know, there's little things that come out and I like grab it at the pop socket and I pull it out. It's like my second or third try. But the first try in this way. And I pull it out and I get it and I like run out. And I'm like, I like drop it on the ground and I'm like so excited. I like run over and I just like pick it up right
with your hand.
Yeah, with my bare hands. It's like covered in poop, but it's kind of like covered on like mainly on one side.
Hey guys, up here gonna do a photo shoot with Hillary and Zach, and you know it's all Billy video him taking a so I'm next. And what the f is going on here? Zach, how's it? How you doing in here, bud? He said, "Get that away from me! Get that away from me!"
But yeah, so we got the phone and then it was still unlocked. So we went in and like stole all our personal no, we didn't do that. We went in and like took a bunch of phone numbers from the recent contacts. And then we went to the Coffee Bear in Silverton and we just sat there like texting and calling and we cleaned it. We cleaned it with like disinfectant or something. And we just sat there like calling numbers and texting numbers until I think it was like her daughter showed up at the coffee shop. Like we're at the Coffee Bear in Silverton. You can come get it. And she showed up and we gave her a phone and she tipped us $20.
That is sacrilege. When I heard that story and you guys arrived at the punchline, I could not believe through that entire ordeal, all you guys had to walk away with was $20. That's insane.
Yeah, but I wasn't really mad. I was like, I mainly just wanted to figure out the puzzle. Like, I mainly just wanted to like see if we could do it, and like see if we could help her out. Just like she's not gonna expect anybody to get this phone for her. Like, it'll just be really cool if we do. Like, so I didn't really care, and I went downstairs and we bought like some snacks at the Coffee Bear. We had free Coffee Bear snacks that day, so yeah, it worked out. But yeah, I understand. People are like, that's all she gave you, like $20. It's like, well,
yeah.
But we used to do stuff like that at BarCamp. Like that was like, it was just like being back at BarCamp. Like,
exactly.
When we lived at BarCamp, my buddy Lonnie, people used to park their cars at Elk Park Knoll or like Devil's Playground and not realize that they like couldn't leave their car there overnight. That like if they hiked in or hiked off the mountain, they had to go back and get their car before the highway closed. So people would like have their cars out there and then be like, oh shoot, like that car has to get down off the mountain. And Lonnie used to run, it's like a 6 mile run out to those parking lots at like, you know, from like 10,000 feet to like 12, 13,000 feet. And he used to run out there. He would run like a valet service. He'd like run out there with their car keys, drive their car down the mountain, and like run back to BarCamp. It was like, Like we totally didn't have to do that stuff. We could have just been like, nope, you're stuck. Like that's it. Like that's your own dumb fault. But like, but at BarCamp, we were just like, Lonnie was just one of those guys of like, okay, what can you do? Give me next. Like, what weird thing can I do next? And he would just jump in and like solve a problem. So that was like the poo phone. It was just like jumping in and solving a problem.
Do you sometimes miss that simplicity of being a caretaker / problem solver to just like the simple life at BarCamp of living at 10,200 feet?
Yeah. Well, my life, like the bus life is pretty simple too. So, and I'm like, don't really have like much on the schedule other than like taking care of myself and training. So, like, you know, and doing some meetings here and there. So it does open me up to like the possibility of like running into random things of like, you know, because usually got somewhere to be, but like I could be driving down the road and like see something weird going on and be like, oh, wonder if I can help out with this one. Like, you know, so I still have like some element of that. But I think maybe if I like, yeah, it just takes me a lot to really like say I missed something, but it was really nice to be at BarCamp and just be like, you basically just had what was in front of you. So like, you know, you grocery shopped for like forever in advance. And like, once you were at camp, you were like 6.25 miles from anything really. So you just like, everything came to you and you just like solved whatever problems were in front of you with whatever you had. It wasn't like, oh, let's go to the store and get this so we can fix this. I mean, it was sometimes, but like on the immediate needs, it was just like, well, let's just work with what we got. And I did really like that simplicity. And like, you know, now it's like, oh, I got to do this. So now I got to drive my car. I got to go to the store. I got to pick this up. I got to wait in this line. I got to, you know, or I got to wait for FedEx to bring this. Like, where at BarCamp, it was a lot of stuff just like on the fly, just like, okay, like, you know, kind of like being on a desert island. Like, okay, well, all our net needs are going to be met with what we have in front of us. So like, let's figure it out, you know, and that's kind of really nice and freeing in a way. So I don't know if I necessarily miss it, but it was like, it was something it was something that I did enjoy.
Well, this dovetails nicely into a Patreon question from Stacia. She wanted to learn, or she wanted to know what you learned about living this nomadic life out of the bus. What were things that you wish you had, and what were some of the newer things that you appreciate?
One thing that there isn't, I don't think there's much that I wish I had, like in terms of the build and everything. Like people be like, oh, what would you change, or what do you wish you did differently? And I tell people, I'm like, really not much. Like I thought through a lot of what I did in building the bus, and like, I mean, not to say that it's perfect, but there isn't really much I would change. And there isn't really much that, like, to her question, that I feel like I want or like, or need, you know what I mean? It's really like, I got the basics of what's there, and it's the simplicity of it is really nice. And I don't really have much of a longing for like, oh, I wish I had this, or I wish I had this, you know? I mean, maybe every now and then, but like, no, really, I'm pretty content. And then in terms of things that I like appreciate, is that how did she word the second part of that?
Yeah, just any new things that you appreciate about living this lifestyle.
Yeah, like you kind of slow down. Like I noticed that right off the bat. There isn't really much of a schedule, and you just kind of take things as it comes. Like the first night I left, I was probably like a combination of like just really being ready to go and also being excited. I left at like 3 a.m. Like that was like when I launched the bus. It was like, because I was like, I'm leaving today. Mm-hmm. It was like, and you're tying up like a million loose ends, and it's like I don't care if it's at like 4 a.m. and I drive for 1 hour and stop at a rest stop 1 hour down the road, pretty much still in my hometown, and sleep the rest of the afternoon. It's like, I'm leaving today. So I left at like 3 a.m. I remember I got to a Sheetz gas station like like 15 minutes from like 10 minutes from my parents' house to fill up the bus for the trip. And I met this character of a guy at like 3 a.m. at Sheetz. And he was a character. Like he was like I would have showed him the inside of the bus maybe, but like he was enough of a character that like on the first night of the trip, I was like, maybe I shouldn't take this guy inside my house. Like, but I really did kind of want to show him because he was so excited. But anyways, like that first night, it was like, boom, this is it. Like it just all comes right to you. It's like, I got to start a journal like right away because I haven't even left home and it already got good. But then like, so yeah, like stuff just pops up and that's like really enjoyable. Like, it's just like, oh, what fun thing are we going to like do today that we didn't know was coming? And then it slows down in the sense of like, when I drove to Colorado, I was thinking it'd be more like, okay, we'll push through in like 2 days or something. And then I think it's like probably 4 or 5 days later, I finally get to Colorado and I'm like, oh yeah, I stopped in Western PA and like, it was nice. So then I took a bath in the river and then, I went to Kentucky cause like they said there was good pizza and riding there. And then that was really nice. So I stayed an extra day and ran. And then I went to the Midwest and figured out the Midwest had really good gravel biking. So I like rode my gravel bike for like 3 hours and took a shower in the parking lot. And you just kind of like, usually I'm in my truck and it's just like, okay, A to B as fast as we can because like nothing in the truck is like super comfortable. Like you're either in the seat or you're like in the bed sleeping, maybe with a bunch of gear squished around you. So you just kind of like sprint from one destination to the next. But with the bus, I was like so comfortable, like just stopping and sleeping and like having a good setup that I just kind of slowed down and like discovered all these like hidden gems in places that I normally just blow through because I'm like, oh, there's nothing in the Midwest. And then I like took it slow in the bus. I was like, no, the Midwest is amazing. I was like, they got like miles and miles and miles of gravel roads, like beautiful gravel roads. Like it's a gem. So that was something that like I really appreciated. It like was something kind of new and different for me.
Well,
and then it's also super social. Like people like it can be, and Tyson, like I can't escape into the mountains just by myself and just like set up shop and just kind of be a hermit. But like a lot of times it's really social. Like, I roll into town where my friends are and then like people want to see me or like I go to a race and then there's people there, it's like, it's also really easy to be like very social on the bus.
Yeah. And that answers that because I would imagine there are times where it could probably feel a little lonely or you feel disconnected from community, people, society. And I think we all need that. I want to focus the next question onto something that I've been thinking about and your comment about finding these little gems, right? Just kind of reminded me of this. It's just kind of zooming out past a year and a half plus. It's been tumultuous to say the least, a lot of negative news, a lot of fearful news. And, whenever I'm facing adversity, I always try to find like, what is the teachable moment here? What is the silver lining amidst all this chaos? Do you think this way? And if so, like, what has been your kind of silver lining takeaway over the past year and a half?
I mean, I feel like I am a silver lining person. Like, I mean, like sometimes I can come across as grumpy in certain situations, but like I feel like deep down I'm usually like I'm like realistic but like still optimistic too. Like we'll be watching we'll be watching the Eagles struggle in a football game and like my dad will be grumbling or something. I'll be like, oh well, like it's still early yet. Like they don't look like that last play was pretty good. Like, yeah, maybe the 3 before that were garbage, but like that last one was pretty good. Like I'm always like trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. Like they might turn it around. Yeah, so I feel like I'm generally like, even if I don't always look it on the outside, like I am deep down, I'm generally fairly optimistic, which I feel like is actually dangerous, has been dangerous with my injury a bit, because it's always like, well, like it just needs more time. Like it'll get there. And then like, if you keep telling yourself that forever, it's like, well, maybe I should be doing something more, like, you know, maybe if I was more pessimistic, I'd be pestering more PTs and doctors being like, we got to figure this out. But optimist to me is like, I just got to be patient. I got to stick with it, you know? But that's not really what you asked about. So like the past year, like I mean, I think there are silver linings in there. Like, I think I think certain families or even friend circles of people like hung out, like smaller groups, like hung out a ton and got to know each other better. You know, I think people like connected with people like virtually, like from long distance, that they wouldn't normally be reaching out to because they're normally too busy, like being in community with like their friends and family that are close by because they can see them in person, you know? So I think those were some silver linings. But yeah, I don't know if I think about it a ton. I mean, I think there's some things from a technology and business standpoint that we've done that are like, oh my, going forward, maybe we want to keep these things, because it's like, maybe we don't all need to rent building space and like run heat and air conditioning and like, you know, and have all of our employees, you know, burning up like however
Fossil
many
fuel.
gallons of gas every week just to go to a building and do the same thing that they could be sitting at home, you know? You know, not that working from home is the best in every situation, you know? And then on the flip side, people realizing that, I don't know, it's kind of crummy to work from home all the time. I kind of need that social interaction of like seeing my coworker, and like I value that, you know? So like, I don't know, I guess there's like a million silver linings you could see. I don't know if there's any one in particular that I really latch on to. Cause yeah, I don't know. Like I really don't, like, I don't feel like I've really gotten real overwhelmed by the whole like pandemic thing. Like I know it's been hard for people. I think I just kind of tend to like be a chameleon and adapt and roll with the punches. So I don't know. And I also live like a really weird life. Like I've like now that I'm vaccinated, and like, I don't know if I can really say the pandemic has improved. Like I'm not really sure where it stands right now.
Yeah, it's gone in
like,
waves.
there was a wave in the summer, early summer, where it felt like, okay, we're getting out of it. Like it's like taking off the masks, and then it was like we slumped back in somewhere. It's like, yeah. Oh no, we're still in the trenches. Like there was like a wedding window where like all the weddings from 2020 had to happen in like 2 months, but none of us knew that it was going to be a 2-month window and then it was going to shut again. And we're like, so everybody that didn't get their wedding and was like, oh, we're doomed. We're just going to elope. Like, I give up. We're just going to elope. Like, but yeah, it's like, but now like I am vaccinated, and like I do take flights to get like, because the bus found its way all the way to Oregon. And then I end up with some family obligations. So I was like, oh, that's a long drive. I'm just going to fly and leave the bus in Oregon and go back and forth for these like quick trips. Eventually the bus will probably drive all the way back to Pennsylvania to visit Pennsylvania again, but not for these quicker trips. So yeah, but like I've been on the plane and stuff, and like, oh, my whole point was that like flying is probably like the most I've had to wear a mask, like, because I don't work like a service industry job. I don't work an office job. So like I basically just put on a mask when I go to a grocery store and stuff like that. So like I've kind of had a different experience too with the pandemic. So like when I had to wear a mask for like 8, 10, 12 hours of airport travel, it was kind of like, oh man, these are kind of uncomfortable. Like, you know, this is different. So like,
yeah, we're just kind of learning to live with it now versus shutting everything down again. At least there's that, you know, if that could be considered silver line, that is certainly one, because I know a lot of businesses were hit, and and very negatively affected by it when everything shut down.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I mean, I remember when I left BarCamp, a friend told me that, like, you never want to be like, they were saying, you know, I was making a lot of changes, and they were saying how, like, well, change is good. You never want to be stagnant for too long. And, you know, and I think some ways, probably pre-pandemic, a lot of us had gotten, it was easy to get kind of stagnant. Like, you know, the world just kind of kept working the way the world normally worked, and you just kind of kept doing stuff the same. So I think that's kind of a silver lining in the pandemic, in that, like, it threw us into this like huge global challenge that, like, just made us rethink how to do things. Like, think how many things we're doing now that we're like, we didn't really do that before. Like, businesses rethought how to do their business, like restaurants rethought how to do their restaurant, and businesses rethought how to do their business of, like, delivery and whatever. And, like, just all this stuff that we kind of, like, reinvented. Like, there's probably pizza shops out there now with, like, takeout windows that they never had before, which is not like rocket science, but it's just like, look how much we've changed, and, like, how much we were forced to kind of, like, adapt. And when you do that, I think you tend to grow. And I think that in and of itself is a good thing. Like, even if it feels kind of like a waste of time in the moment, in the big picture, it's a good thing for, like, development and growth. Like, it's kind of like the space program. Like, do we really need to go to the moon? Like, you know, there's probably various opinions on that, but, like, you know, I've been pretty content here on Earth, on planet Earth, you know, so do we really need to go to the moon? But, like, think of all the things that we learned how to do by going to the moon that then benefit us, you know, in other ways.
One of the best things for me personally to come out of all this was the abundance of outdoor dining. And, you know, it makes a lot of sense in areas like Colorado and whatnot, but here in Hermosa Beach, where it's nice and sunny most of the year round, we have this vibrant outdoor seating areas that it kind of feels European. It feels cool. There's a lot more energy there. So that's for sure one of my favorite things to come out of all this.
Yeah. And hand sanitizer and toilet paper in porta potties. It's been amazing. Like it's like I go around and like, you go into a porta potty nowadays, and, like, good chance there's going to be a good supply of toilet paper and hand sanitizer, which was, like, never the case pre-COVID. Like, yeah. I'm like, look what we have been capable of this entire time. But we weren't doing. Like, look, people, we could do it all along. We could keep these things stocked, which is not like, I mean, half the time I'm just, like, pooping in the woods and wiping with leaves and snowballs and rocks and sticks, you know, so I don't really need those amenities, but they are, like, pretty nice. Like, they are pretty nice to have, and also beneficial to, like, the cleanliness of, like, you know, people as we use outdoor spaces. So, like, I think that was one of the huge things I noticed. I was like, they've all got it now. Like, it's incredible.
Well, the bidet market, certainly, pardon the pun, shot through the roof too. So there's that. People are definitely a lot more hygienic. I want to get away from the poop talk, but I do want to go back to food, because it's a Patreon question from somebody as well, who wrote, on Instagram, Zach is kind enough to share pictures of his amazing breakfast choices, but what does he eat for dinner? And, you know, obviously I love this question because it's my favorite topic. And I have to say, Zach, your eating is almost as impressive as you're running, and how much you can put down. Case in point, the Philly Taco Challenge between you, me, and Maggie Gutero.
Oh yeah,
back several months ago, and how you managed to polish off not only your own Philly taco, but mine and Maggie's as well. But let's answer his food question.
Yeah. What do I eat? Well, there isn't really much that's off limits to me diet wise. I'm not really big, like, I don't know. I don't really try to do a lot of, like, restricting of things. It's more just, like, I guess, trying to keep a bulk of good things. And then, you know, every now and then you have some junk, you know, or just some stuff just because. But, like, I like to stick to, like whole foods, or foods that are just, like, good nutritional value foods that I kind of like, I like know where it's coming from. You know, I don't like to go into a grocery store aisle and like pick up a box and read the ingredient. I guess I also maybe don't buy that much that comes from a box, but like pick up something and read the ingredients, and it's like I know the first two things, and then after that it's like a whole phone book of stuff that I can't pronounce and don't know where it comes from. You know, I try to avoid stuff like that. But like a dinner for me will be let's see, like in general I eat a lot of fruits and veggies, and then I definitely do like some potatoes or like beets, you know, do some grains and stuff. But I mean, I guess in the bus, pasta is a pretty common dinner choice. So I'll make like making like sauteing a bunch of veggies and then doing like some type of pasta, whether it's like spaghetti or some other type of noodle, and then doing like olive oil and balsamic instead of like a tomato sauce. Sometimes it's a tomato sauce, sometimes it's just like olive oil and balsamic and seasonings, and then the veggies and all that mixed together. So that would be like a common dinner for me. I might also just like make some sort of like, I don't know, maybe like a veggie dish with like some eggs. I eat a lot of eggs when I'm in the bus. I've been eating less meat on the bus. I'm not vegetarian, but I've found myself in the bus eating way less meat, getting protein more from like eggs. Probably like eggs and nuts. I eat a lot of nuts and seeds. So I feel like I'm not being super clear on this answer, but like,
no, but
try and kind of keep it whole nutrition.
Yeah, as somebody who's been lucky enough to be on the receiving end of many of your meals, which you're very gracious and thoughtful in serving others. And some of my fondest memories from this past summer were like right there in your table that's set up in the middle of your bus, and you're serving up something that's not really identifiable per se. Some of the times it's just like sometimes it's just like a random mishmash of random ingredients, but it's very vegetable centric, egg centric, and just
I think we did some tacos. The bus has certainly seen some tacos. Yeah. Some taco nights. So I guess tacos, that's I love a good taco night. But yeah, and then sometimes it's just like whatever's around and it's getting thin and it's like quesadillas, you know? Trying when I'm at home with my parents, and my mom spoils me, it's almost always like a pretty big salad with flax, like ground flax and, olive oil and balsamic vinegar and like sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, nutritional yeast, and then whatever's in the salad, like greens and tomatoes and carrots and all that stuff. So my mom knows to have salad at pretty much every meal. So I have a salad and then whatever else she happens to make, which my mom is a great cook. So there's a whole range of things that she makes, but like she'll make salmon. She knows I like salmon and stuff like that.
We started off this conversation talking about social media and Strava in particular. There's definitely pros and cons to it depending on your relationship with it. But I'm wondering if there was a reason. I guess I'm just curious about your overall relationship with social media, because it can be quite addicting. It can both serve and not serve you in a myriad of ways. But Strava in particular, for somebody like yourself, I'm sure can be, you can easily fall into that comparison, right? Of like, what is this athlete doing and that doing? And I think maybe that's why you might have avoided it, to kind of avoid the trappings of comparing yourself to others. But just overall, your relationship with social media, what is it like these days?
I probably spend way more time on Instagram than I would like. I wish I'd rein that in a bit. But I mean, in general, I like Instagram's my main thing. Like, you don't really find me on like Twitter much, or So I don't do Snapchat. I don't do TikTok. I don't I'm barely ever on Facebook, although I do auto post a lot of stuff from Instagram to Facebook, but I rarely ever go on there and look at stuff. So mainly for me, social media is like Instagram. Like that's the gist of it, I guess. Which maybe that means I'm falling behind the times because I haven't hopped on the TikTok train with all the young kids. But there's a part of me that says that if we could go back and just do away with all the social media, we'd be better off. Like there is certainly a part of me that says that. Like if we had the choice, social media or no social media, be like, let's just do no social media. And I think that's just largely because I think like the face-to-face interaction is just like so much more valuable. I'm not going to say that there isn't value to social media. I think there is. There's so many people that I end up connecting with, and whether it's I actually end up meeting them in person someday, or whether it's we just communicate through some messages, or they like watch something that I see something that I post and it impacts them. So there is a lot of good. I actually just got a really touching message from a follower on Instagram the other day, and I still need to write back, but I was really glad they reached out, and they were just expressing like how much they had what had they seen. I had written a piece for Iron Far back when I was leaving BarCamp, called "But What If It's Good?" And it was a spin-off of something my sister Ashley had actually written that inspired me to write like kind of my take on that thought. And I guess this follower had read that and it really impacted their life. And they wrote to me the other day and told me that. And it's really neat. It's just like, oh wow. So like some of this stuff like really does have a profound impact on people's lives. And I think that's awesome. But is all of that worth like what we sacrifice for the fact that we go through an airport for 8 hours of travel and do nothing but this the whole time, or
staring at your phone?
Yeah. Like we just look at our phones all day. And I look at my phone a lot, and like, family will come over watching TV and, we're having a good time, but people are also looking at their phones. Like, so I kind of hate that we've fallen in. Humans have a tough time with self-control. And I think it's just kind of like a big trap that we've fallen into. And I just don't know that the rewards exceed that the good things exceed the negative things, because I think we would still be finding ways to be like inspired and influenced and like built up, and without all the social media stuff. Like those things don't, like being inspired, being motivated, being lifted up, being connected with someone doesn't have to come through a screen. Like that could come through actual personal interaction, and it would probably be more meaningful. So yeah, I feel like if we could trade it would be a worthy trade to just like just go without it, like it never existed. But it's here. So I feel like my use of it is like, well, it's here and it's part of what I do, and it's like basically part of my job, so I might as well try and use it in a positive way.
Yeah.
So that's what I try. So that's what I try to do. And I post like a lot. Like I post some serious stuff, and then I also just post a bunch of goofy stuff that's like, maybe everybody's just annoyed at looking at what goofy thing I'm doing again, but I'm just gonna put it up here. So maybe somebody will laugh. So yeah, and it is dangerous when stuff gets really fake and it's just done for like monetary reasons, or it's just done to like, I don't know, put on a good face, and it does skew. You hear people talk, I feel a lot these days about how much it gets skewed of like only the good, and people are like, oh, everyone else's life is just so amazing and I'm the only one over here struggling, so And that's why we all appreciate it so much when somebody gets on there and shares like a story of struggle, because they're like, oh, someone else is struggling too. Like, thank goodness it's not just me. And that's like all of us. But just like, you don't tend to, post that stuff. And it's not necessarily wrong. But when you're looking at your social media, you have to remember that like most of this is the good stuff people are going through. And there's actually like a lot of people out there who have both good and bad, and so like whatever, if you're going through something, it's actually probably pretty normal. Like, even if you feel like it's abnormal, like there are a few people that go through some really abnormal things, but like for the most part, I feel like, we're all kind of like, we're not all average, but like we all go through a lot of really similar things. So like if you're going through it, someone else probably is too. And you just have to remember that when you're looking at all that barrage of goodness.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can end it here, but there is, speaking of social media, I do think one of the trappings is that we don't really fully pause in certain circumstances to acknowledge people, especially after they passed. And I know one of the reasons that you mentioned, alluded to, was coming back to Pennsylvania to visit the family after your grandmother passed away. But and look, everyone dies at a certain point. I think that's what makes life that much more immediate and urgent and precious. But, definitely one of her legacies was when I came across a family photo and I just see all these generations of Millers, or I guess in her case, Kohlers, and
yeah,
and that was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. Just I know your mom and Uncle Bob and everyone else is still missing this person that just left this giant void. But if you really zoom out and think about it in terms of like the life that she's created and the family that she's created, and yourself included, it's just a good chance to pause and think about somebody before just. Again, with social media, you just like ADHD, everyone's moving on. Well, this person passed. Okay, move on. What's next? What's next in outrage culture, cancel culture? So I don't know. I thought I would just give you a minute to pause and acknowledge her and share a little bit about who she was. And yeah, and just the myriad of different family members that you've inherited as a result.
Yeah, I mean, my grandmother passed a few weeks ago now. This is actually my second trip home to Pennsylvania, because I was planning to come home for this trip, and I actually ended up coming like 3 weeks early before this trip, because my grandma she got sick. She was 94, so she lived a really long time, but she got pneumonia, and at 94 her body just couldn't really fight it. So she passed pretty quickly. Like I was out like bus camping in a more remote area, and they were actually having trouble getting a hold of me. And until I got into good service, I was like, I forget, like within an hour. So I was driving to the airport to hop on a plane. But yeah, my grandma, Jane Kohler was her name. She was 94 years old. She was married to my grandfather for, I think this November would have been 75 years, which is pretty remarkable. And she had 6 kids. They lived in a row house in Lancaster City. I don't think they had a lot of money. My grandma worked at the cafeteria at the high school, I believe, and my grandfather was a carpenter, and they raised 6 kids in that row house. And their first child actually was blind because she was given too much oxygen as a baby. So their first child was blind, and then they had 5 more children after that. So a pretty large family. And then a lot of their kids had kids. So our family is big. I have a brother-in-law who comes from a family where he has no cousins. He comes to our family reunion, and he's like, he'll explain to other brother-in-laws. He'll be like, yeah, it's a little overwhelming. like it's a lot of people. And now everybody, like all my sisters and cousins are like having kids, so it just keeps growing. So now we get together and there's like all these kids running around. It's like kind of crazy. But yeah, like Billy was saying, it's all like out of my grandmother and my grandfather, and just like the life that they shared blossomed into this much bigger thing that's just like really big, and each one of us has our own life that then touches some other lives, and it's just like this big spider web. So but yeah, she left a lot. She certainly left her mark. It would have been interesting to know my grandmother in her younger years, when she was like a mother of 6 kids running around the house, and see her in action, because she was probably pretty remarkable. But I just knew my grandmother in like her older years, so I probably kind of knew like the same person, but also a different person than like my mom and her siblings would have known. So I think she was a pretty like feisty and stubborn woman. And in her older years, she did suffer some from some medical things with her mind was not good, and her memory was really poor. But I grew up with, they lived in an in-law quarters within my parents' house. Our house is kind of like 2 houses in one. So I actually grew up with my grandmother basically my whole life. And that was really special. And yeah, and it was the time we had with her was special, but after 94 years, like you said, Billy, like everyone does move on at some point. And yeah, we were lucky to have her while we did. And now she's passed, but she's left a lot of good behind her in this earth. So there's a silver lining to even the difficult things.
I'm curious for you personally, like what, at the end of this thing called life, what would be a life well lived for you, Zach Miller?
I think mainly just like a life where you help other people. Like, I feel like I often feel like I could do more and don't do enough, but like, there's a lot of ways you can touch people and help people. And, whether it's through an organization or whether it's just through like the way you live your life day to day. But yeah, I think like I would want to go out and be able to look back and be like, look at all these people that like I touched and interacted with and helped, that I wasn't just always, in the world of sports and like elite athletics, it's really easy to feel a bit selfish and be like, oh, I'm always like focused on like what I got to do to get better, which is like kind of tied to, which is easy to like give an excuse because like you're like, oh, well, people get like fired up about this. So like, it's like my job to like focus on myself and get really good so I can inspire people, but I don't think that's not like your only job. Like, I think your job is like to get out there and also just like help people, like maybe sometimes do the thing that isn't necessarily conducive to your training, just because like there's somebody who needs your help and you should jump in and do that. So yeah, I live a lifestyle that's can feel very like centered on yourself, like centered on myself. So for me, if I were to pass and be able to look back and be like, yeah, I did the best with the gifts that I had, but I also used the gifts that I had to help a lot of other people. That would be like what's really important. So
yeah, I think in the film you tied it very closely as your purpose in life is to impact people through running, through mentorship, through various other things, and just the character that you are, I think, is super impactful as well, as you alluded to in some of your writing and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's really it's really cool when you see that in like other athletes too, because you can be really hard on yourself, be like, oh, I'm not doing enough, or I should be doing more. But it's always like encouraging when you see other athletes living that out too. Like, I know I was impressed by Jim Walmsley this summer when I hung out with him in the San Juans, which was like not a ton, but like he was just like always volunteering with the hard rock stuff, like going out and doing course markings. And then like, the one that really got me was like we camped out in Cunningham like the night before And like I was like, we camped out in Cunningham. He camped out like right next to me in his truck. I was in my bus, and we like woke up early for the runners to come through. And like I had no clue he did it, but he had driven. He like woke up early, drove all the way back to town, which it's a decently rough road to get up to Cunningham. It's a little bit of a process. And he had drove all the way back to town, watched the start, and then drove all the way back up. And I was like, I don't know if I said anything to him, but it's like, dude, like I didn't know you were gonna do that. Like that's awesome. Like you could have been like, you could have very easily acknowledged your need for like an extra hour of sleep that day. But you could tell that like his week that week was like not, it wasn't like just focused on like himself. It was like he was very much there, like giving to other people. And I thought that was like, that was really neat. And, you know, and there's other athletes who do similar. Like whenever you're around Courtney DeWalter, she's always like, so like taking the time to like be with people and whatnot, which is like, is really cool to see. And yeah, there's just like, there's a lot of athletes doing a lot of really cool things, and just a lot of humans doing a lot of really cool things. And it's always great to see that stuff.
Well, Zach, you're certainly one of them. I don't want to keep you away from the family too much longer because I know it's your final night there. So go and be with them. But definitely, I just want to acknowledge you and thank you for your time. And hopefully our paths can cross again so I can have some of your delicious bus-cooked meals.
Oh, yeah. No, hopefully they will. So, and you'll have to, if we just like keep going like 10 more minutes, I think I'm just going to naturally fade into darkness here. So,
well, we won't go 10 more minutes. Thanks a lot, Zach. Have a good evening.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Billy.